in NTU, they have different scholarships. So I am currently under NTU Research Scholarship or NTU RSS. These are the things. So even after like with all these failures, to still stay motivated and like sort of believe in your key question that no, I still want to address it. There has to be other way around it, or to come up with a new idea every other week, I would say, when something doesn't work, is I think the biggest struggle.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the PhD Scholar series of Humans in Education project. I am here with the 5th episode of this series and our guest for today is Ruchi Chaudhary from India. She started her PhD direct after her graduation. She did her bachelor's in pharmacy from BITS Pilani, India. Currently, she is doing a PhD in biological science at Nanyang Technological University, which is quite well known as NTU Singapore. In this insightful conversation, Ruchi mainly talked about her research topic and its potential impact, then about her research group and its activities, how to apply for the PhD program at NTU Singapore, and different challenges as a PhD researcher. The selection process and the structure of PhD in Singapore is quite different from what is commonly found in other parts of the world. And Ruchi discussed this in detail in this conversation. Finally, she has some invaluable advices for the students which can help them to make better choices for the PhD program. So now let's listen more from Ruchi. Hello Ruchi, welcome to this session and thank you so much for accepting my invitation and for your valuable time.
Thank you, Kripali. Thanks for inviting me.
You are welcome. So let's start now. First, would you please tell us a bit more about you?
Sure. So hello everyone. As Kripali introduced, I am Ruchi Chaudhary and I'm currently doing my PhD in biological sciences from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And I'm in my 4th year of PhD. So I've finished almost like 3 years of my PhD. And I'm planning to finish and submit my thesis by next year. And before starting my PhD, I did a Bachelor of Pharmacy from BITS Pilani, India. And right after my undergrad, I joined PhD. Other than research and academics, I like my general hobbies are I like dancing, and so that I still am pursuing in my free time. And I'm a social person, so I like going out, traveling. But like for the last 2 years, I couldn't do it because of COVID. But now since the borders are open again, so I can travel a lot. And that's one good advantage of staying in Singapore, that many like Southeast Asian countries are nearby and it's very easy to travel to these countries. So that's one benefit.
What is your research area in PhD?
Oh, yeah. So my research focuses on understanding the DNA interactions that lead to cancer growth. And we're also trying to know whether these interactions can be reversed so that we can, target this as for developing new cancer therapies, which are more targeted and which have lesser side effects compared to the current therapies that we have.
Okay. And how did you land up in this specific field? What was your motivation?
Yeah, so actually, as I just told you that after my undergrad, I directly joined my PhD. So during my undergrad, for my final year, we're supposed to submit a thesis called the final year project. So during that FYP, I opted to do it in Singapore. Like we have this exchange program sort of a thing. So I contacted professors in abroad and I got one opportunity in National University of Singapore. So I actually did my final year project here. And that was my first exposure and real hands-on experience on research. Because what I did in undergrad was very different from how research labs work. So it was during those 6 months, I realized that research is something I really enjoy. And I felt like I'm actually maybe good at it. So maybe I should continue doing this. So it was during that time that I decided to go and have a career in research. And also, since I was here for 6 months, I got this opportunity of exploring different labs that are there in Singapore, in NUS, as well as in NTU, my current university. So I used to mail my few professors from these universities to have a one-to-one chat with them. Or sometimes I would try to talk to people who are working in these labs And it was during that 6 months that I actually got an exposure, and I finally decided to take up PhD.
Okay.
And
What can be the potential impact of your research work?
so the potential impact, so as we know that current cancer therapies are basically surgery if detected at the right time, or chemotherapy or radiation. So chemotherapy and radiation are actually very like painful for the patient, and it has many side effects. It's as dangerous as the cancer itself. So what we are trying to do is develop therapies which are very targeted, so that there are much like better efficacy and lesser side effects. So that's what we're trying to like find out, very key mechanisms in cancer which can be very specific to cancer. So if we target those, the healthier cells can still survive and be healthy. So that's the idea and goal behind my project. And yeah, that's what we are trying to achieve.
Can you please tell us a bit more about your research group? I mean, about its
Yeah.
activities and other research groups which are working in the similar field.
Sure. So in my research lab, so the general idea is studying the DNA interactions. But so for my project, I am looking at a certain type of DNA interaction, which is between an enhancer, which is, as the name suggests, it has an enhancing activity. So when this enhancer interacts with a cancer causing gene, it can lead to cancer. So this is the general hypothesis. And this has been shown previously also that this is the kind of interaction I am trying to study. Similarly, we have other projects in which students are trying to study how suppressors, when they interact with a tumor suppressing gene, that can also lead to cancer. So there are like different kinds of interactions that my lab is trying to understand. We're also trying to develop some models to better predict these interactions, because right now the experiments that we are doing are actually very expensive. So it's not like it cannot be clinically used as of now, because it's too expensive for someone to carry out these experiments on a clinical level. So we are trying to develop new methods to make this much more easier. So those are the kind of projects that my lab is working on. But as far as cancer research is concerned, there are like some amazing work that is happening. So one exciting work is in the field of immunotherapy. So that's a very promising field in which a few labs are working on, training our immune cells better so that they can go recognize cancer cells and kill them. So that'll be just very useful. So that's a very exciting field of research in case of immunotherapy. Then there are also labs which are working on better drug delivery, so that the drugs or the chemicals that they want to deliver are just targeted to the cancer cells. So those are also very like interesting research I find that is happening in the area of cancer.
As a researcher, we undoubtedly encounter many obstacles, right? So can you
That's
please
true.
tell which challenge you find as a PhD researcher?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I face, and I think is very common with a lot of my peers also, is to stay motivated throughout, even after multiple failures that we go. So I feel like during this PhD journey, failures are sort of a part of it. Like it's small failures, like experiments might not work, or because the hypothesis that you have built might not work out, because like generally a hypothesis is sort of a prediction. So when you actually do the experiment, it might turn out that no, it's not how I sort of guessed or predicted. So these are the things. So even after like with all these failures, to still stay motivated and like sort of believe in your key question that no, I still want to address it. There has to be other way around it, or to come up with a new idea every other week, I would say, when something doesn't work, is I think the biggest struggle, and which is exciting also. It has its own, both pros and cons. So I agree. I believe that is a big struggle. Other than that, I feel that the PhD journey is very personal and independent. Like when you do other degrees, like when I studied undergrad, so there was like this whole batch which was studying the same courses. They had the same exams, they had the same tests, so you could relate with their lives. But right now, my project or my PhD journey is just me doing it all by myself. So there are times when you feel a little, you can't relate to anyone. Like when your experiment did not work, only you can understand what you're going through. No one else can understand the pain of it, or how worrisome, like how you're feeling at that time.
Yes.
So I feel this is another thing, like to you don't have lot many people to share your stress or your problems with. But then I think eventually that's what growing up is. You eventually learn how to do it. But that also I feel initially is a little bit of a problem. Uh, and I think another thing that I want to point is that in PhD, like there's no very clear curriculum. Like you don't have like 10 exams you have to pass and you get the degree. So it again it becomes variable. There are times when you don't know if you're doing enough. There are times when you don't know what the right balance is, as in because you don't have exams to like pass or something like that. Your project might get stuck for months, and or in a week you might get really good results. So it's just this variability also that takes some time getting used to. I feel so. These are some problems that I felt, but yeah, it's a different experience.
Okay. And why did you choose NTU Singapore for your PhD?
NTU because so my main reason for choosing NTU was the lab. To be very honest, because when I was doing my undergrad here, so at that time I was reading about all the projects that is happening in Singapore. So I used to meet the professors, and then I felt that NTU, like there were multiple labs that I was interested in working with. One being my own lab, and there were other labs also that I was like very interested in working in their lab group. So that was a major reason why I like applied and I chose NTU in the end. And also, since I lived in Singapore, I knew Singapore and I was comfortable staying here for another 4 5 years. So that was a plus mark for me. And also the PhD program in I think both NUS and NTU is very well organized. So it's just so we have like every year you have like a thesis presentation which marks your progress, and then our curriculum, so the coursework is also very well defined, which usually will be over in the first 2 years of your PhD. And if you're on track and nothing major happens, then you will be able to finish your PhD in 4 years. So I feel it's very organized, and so that was something which was a very big plus point for me, that okay, there is a because I hear stories wherein students end up doing PhD for 7 8, or there's no deadline to be in that manner. So this was more ensuring for me that okay, no, usually people get it in 4 years, and the curriculum is quite straightforward. There are no hidden requirements. Like it's very transparent. Like as long as you're doing this much, as long as your thesis is enough, you can defend it, your project is justified, you get a PhD. So that was also a very big plus point for me why I chose NTU for my PhD.
What is the process? How did you apply for the PhD in NTU? What is the process and documents required?
So for NTU, like when I applied, so I wrote GRE and I wrote TOEFL. So these were the two exams that I wrote before applying. But I think GRE and GMAT scores are like, even if you have written GMAT, you're eligible for the program. And as I think recently, I'm not very sure about this information, but recently they have, I think, waived off this requirement of the test. But but my time I wrote GRE. And even if they have waived off, I think it's a plus point for your application, because I was applying directly after my undergrad, so I was already a little intimidated by my other applicants. So it was a plus point for my application. After that, other than these two tests, you'll need a SOP, a statement of purpose, LORs. So these they at least minimum 3 recommendation letters are advised. And that is one thing. And you need a CV, a well-defined CV. So I think these are a few things that document-wise that you'll be needing. And once you submit these documents, then there's a first round of just application screening, and then you'll be shortlisted for like this online interview process. It was a Skype interview, which is usually like 20 to 25 minutes long. And after that, they call you for an on-campus interview. Okay. And that was like a 4-day thing. So usually it's all paid for, your travel and stay. So it's not very expensive in that manner. So then you have to come to Singapore, and in those 4 days, we have a written test. So that written test is basically just to check your writing abilities. So usually they give you a research paper and ask you to write an abstract for it or a summary for it. So just to understand just to see if you can have the basic understanding of reading a research paper. So we have like that sort of a written test. And then there was a presentation the next day in which we were supposed to present either any of our papers or our thesis, any thesis, either master or undergrad thesis, and which was followed by an interview. So this was overall the process. And after these 2 days, on the third day, we were encouraged to meet professors and like talk to them about their research projects and meet labs and basically shortlist some professors in mind, because once you're selected for the scholarship, you're eligible to choose any lab of your interest. So this becomes a major task, choosing a lab. That's whole different confusion as to how to choose a lab. So you're encouraged to meet as many professors as possible, meet their lab members, and then have a sort of an idea as to what lab you'll be choosing. And then within 14 to 15 days, they inform you whether you've gotten the scholarship or not.
Okay.
Yeah, that's roughly the process.
So there are many steps for this.
That's true.
Your PhD is funded, or you are getting some specific scholarship for that?
Okay, so my PhD is funded. So in NTU, they have different scholarships. So I am currently under NTU Research Scholarship or NTU RSS. Okay. So in this scholarship, my tuition fees is covered, and I also get a monthly stipend, which is like good enough for me to like sustain and live in Singapore, basically. So this is one of the scholarships. There are like many other scholarships also. Like there's one more President Scholarship, NTU President Scholarship, and there's one more Singa Scholarship, which is this is basically for international students. Okay. But the one catch in this is that they encourage diversity a lot. So if you're a student from, say, India or China or countries which have like more population, and students from these countries come to Singapore quite a lot, then your chances of getting through this scholarship might be a little less, because they encourage diversity. Yes. So that's a catch. So these are few scholarships that you can apply, like one can apply for. I did RSS, and you can apply for all of these. So it's not that just one. Yeah, you can apply for all. And then whichever you get selected for, you can take that. And also there are like few professors who have their own grants, and they can also like hire PhD students. But for that, you have to like cold mail all the professors and check with them and then you can't choose a different lab, because then you have already spoken and you're working with a particular professor. So that flexibility goes away. So that's why I did not opt for that, because I thought I can't make a decision just by mailing. I want to go there and select a lab. So that's why I didn't apply for that. But if someone is very certain as to what project they want to do, what kind of lab they want to be in, then it's a good option for them to like check with the professor if they have any scholarship. Okay. So the Singa scholarship is only for the students in NTU, or it's for PhD in anywhere in Singapore? So usually the scholarships that I'm mentioning up, they're both in NUS and NTU. Okay. Their PhD program, the entire application process is almost the same. Okay. Same, everything, the process is same. I think they also have Singa, they also have NUS, RSS, same like me, stipend money, and everything is all the same. Okay. Instead of President Scholarship, they have a scholarship called NGS. Again, same thing, just names are different. Right. So both universities, more or less, their programs are very similar. And even the labs are actually very collaborative. So my lab currently is in NUS, although I'm a student of NTU. So my lab is like a collaborative lab. My professor works in like both the universities. So they have many collaborations, these universities, and their processes are quite similar. Okay. And which are the other scholarships for doing PhD in Singapore other than this NTU? Yeah, I think these are majorly the ones, because all the three that I mentioned are funded by government. So here government funding is more common. And so basically the Ministry of Education, these are all MOE funded scholarships. So these are pretty much the scholarships that are out there. But another thing that can be done, like students can opt for is, so especially in NUS, there are more departments. So in NTU, my school is School of Biological Sciences, and that's it. So I can apply for School of Biological Sciences. Okay. But in NUS, there are different departments. So there's a School of Medicine, then there's a School of Department of Biological Sciences, then there's a separate School of Biochemistry or something. So you can apply to different departments. So your chances of getting selected will be more. So,
Yes.
but usually no one gets multiple offers from the same college. That is not happening because they're not wasting scholarships. But then your chances of getting since I had a background in pharmacy, I also applied for School of Pharmacy as well as Biological Sciences. So you have more chances of getting selected in any of the scholarships, and also the 3 scholarships that I mentioned. So yeah, so that's pretty. But these are the most common PhD scholarships that I know of. Yeah, that students are.
Okay.
Having right.
What is your future
Hmm.
goal in career after finishing your PhD?
So after my PhD, I want to continue in academia. Like as of now, I love research. I don't know how it will turn out to be in the future, but as of now, I want to stay in research and want to continue in academia. So I want to pursue postdoctorate for some time after my PhD, and I want to like travel more and try out research in different parts of the world. So like how is the research culture in the US or Europe or back in India? So I want to like travel more and see how research culture and research works in all these parts of the country. And so I want to stay in academia and hopefully someday become a professor and have students of my own. And yeah, that's what I plan to do.
How is your experience in living Singapore
Hmm.
as an international student?
Living in Singapore is, I think it's not very difficult. Like the cultural shock is very less. So I would say you can find good amount of Indians, or like the diversity is quite a lot. So for me, Indians were my comfort, like group to be in. But if even if you're from a different country, you can find diverse number of people, and you definitely find someone from your own country, and it'll be easier for you to have a social life. Other than that, the thing was language is one thing. Like everyone speaks English,
Okay.
but understanding their accent is one task. It'll take some time getting used to. Like you'll not know it initially. Like eventually you'll start understanding it better. But language is one problem, one cultural shock that you'll get. And otherwise, living here has been like really good because it's a very very safe country, like extremely safe. You never The local transportation is amazing. Like you never have to think about traveling at all. There's the entire city or country is well connected by buses, metros, which are always working. So transportation is very convenient. Also, I feel like it's a very disciplined and organized country. So it's good, but initially it took me some time to getting used to it. But it's a very organized country. So I didn't face a lot of problems per se because I found good social life as well as a security that basically a student would want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is your advice for the students who are applying for the PhD?
Uh, I think I have few advices. So I think the first one is when students are applying for PhD program, I feel before applying, if you're a student like me who's directly joining after undergrad, then you don't really have enough experience like research exposure. So if you're a student like that, like try to get some research exposure before opting for this because it's a very long commitment.
Yes.
You might think that it'll be exciting and all good work, but it has its own ups and downs. So I feel in some sort of like an internship, or if not internship, then something like an RA-ship or some research exposure is very advisable before opting for this. And it actually helps the application process also because that's what even colleges are looking for, some research experience. So that is something which I'll advise. Other than that, I think when choosing a lab, I feel it's my personal opinion that I feel give more importance to a lab than university. Like I feel like students have more this they'll just see the rankings of the universities and they just opt for it. But in the end, like it becomes such a personal experience, like the lab that you're working with, the professor that you're working with, and your lab group, that you're no longer part of the university. Like you are a part of the university, but this lab group becomes your entire workplace. So I think it's a little different mindset to getting used to because I always like when new students are coming, they'll always like, oh, this university ranks better, I should just join it. But maybe a different university, maybe not as good ranking wise, will have a better suited project for you. So I think knowing and reading about these projects, they require some time. Like you have to go through the pages, you have to see all the labs, It requires some time, some effort, but it's worth it. So always look at the projects that are there in a university before choosing any scholarship program. So these are a few things that I usually feel that students miss, but I think you should take into account this factor.
Thank you so much, Ruchi, for your valuable time and sharing your journey and this insightful talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Krupali, for inviting me. It was a great talk.
Thank you.